Most people walk past pennies every day without a second thought. But what if I told you that one small copper coin from 1960 could be worth far more than its face value, and might already be sitting in someone's old jar, dresser drawer, or inherited collection right now? Today, we're diving into the story of the 1960 D Mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries hidden history, fascinating varieties, and surprising collector demand. Whether you're a long-time collector or someone who just enjoys discovering value in everyday objects, this coin has more to reveal than you might expect. The 1960 D Lincoln cent was struck at the Denver Mint, which is why it carries the small D mint mark just below the date on the front of the coin. This penny features Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. By 1960, the Lincoln cent had already become one of the most recognizable coins in American history, circulating in the pockets of millions of Americans during a time of enormous cultural change. The year 1960 was a turning point in many ways. The United States was entering a new decade, the space race was heating up, and everyday life was evolving fast. But the penny remained constant, a symbol of continuity, practicality, and quiet tradition. And yet, behind its familiar appearance, the 1960 D cent holds some unique qualities that make it especially interesting to collectors today. Let's take a closer look at what this coin is made of and how it was designed. The 1960 D Lincoln penny is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the same bronze alloy used for most Lincoln cents from 1909 until 1982. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. On the front, or obverse, you'll see Victor David Brenner's iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln, with the words "In God We Trust" across the top, "Liberty" on the left, and the date with the D Mint mark on the right. Flip the coin over, and you'll see the famous wheat ears design on the reverse, with 1 cent and United States of America in the center and E pluribus unum above. This wheat reverse was used from 1909 through 1958, but here's something interesting. Even though the wheat design officially ended in 1958, some collectors mistakenly think it lasted longer. In reality, the 1960 D penny features the Lincoln Memorial reverse, introduced in 1959. That design shows the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln between the columns. So why does the 1960 D penny stand out among millions of others from that era? One of the biggest reasons is that 1960 was a transition year in U.S. coin production. During this period, the U.S. Mint was experimenting with different hub styles, the master dies used to strike coins. That resulted in noticeable design variations, especially in the size and shape of the date. Collectors today recognize two main varieties from 1960, the large date and the small date. These differences may look subtle to the untrained eye, but once you see them side by side, they become surprisingly easy to spot. On the large date variety, the numbers in the year 1960 appear thicker and taller, especially the 9 and 6, which look more rounded and bold. On the small date variety, the numbers are thinner, more compact, and slightly more delicate. The small date version is generally scarcer, especially in high-grade condition, which makes it more desirable to collectors. Now let's talk about mintages. The Denver Mint produced over 1.58 billion Lincoln cents in 1960, an enormous number. At first glance, that might suggest this coin should be extremely common and worth only face value. And in worn condition, many examples are indeed only worth a few cents above 1 penny. But coin value is not just about how many were made. It's about how many survived in excellent condition, how many have unique varieties, and how many appeal to collectors for historical or visual reasons. This is where the 1960 D penny becomes more interesting. High-grade examples, especially those that retain full mint luster, sharp details, and no major marks, are surprisingly hard to find. Most pennies from the 1960s circulated heavily and were often stored loosely in jars or bags, where they picked up scratches, dulling, and wear. As a result, truly pristine examples are scarce. And then there are errors. Error coins are mistakes made during the minting process, and they can dramatically increase a coin's value. On the 1960 penny, collectors have found doubled dies, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, and weak or missing mint marks. One of the most popular error types is the doubled die obverse, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially in the date or lettering. These doubling effects are caused by misalignment during the die creation process, and they're highly collectible when strong and clearly visible. Another interesting variety involves repunched mint marks, where the D mint mark was punched into the die more than once, resulting in a doubled or slightly shifted appearance. Since mint marks were added to dies by hand during this era, repunching errors were not uncommon, but finding one today in nice condition still excites collectors. So what kind of money are we talking about? In circulated condition, a typical 1960 penny might sell for anywhere from 2 to 10 cents, depending on copper value and overall eye appeal. But uncirculated examples, especially certified by professional grading services, can sell for significantly more. A clean, bright example in mint state condition might bring $1 to $5, while higher grade coins can reach $20, $50, or even more. Small date varieties in high grade tend to command stronger premiums. In top-tier conditions, some have sold at auction for several $100s. Error coins can go even higher. Well-defined doubled dies or dramatic off-center strikes from 1960 have sold for hundreds to thousands of dollars, depending on severity, condition, and collector demand. What's important here isn't that every 1960 penny is valuable. It's that some are, and you can't tell just by glancing at them casually. Many valuable coins are overlooked because they look ordinary to people who don't know what to look for. So how do you identify a genuine 1960 penny, and how can you tell if yours might be special? First, look at the front of the coin and confirm the date reads 1960 with a small D just below it. If there's no mint mark, that means it was struck in Philadelphia instead. Then examine the condition. Is Lincoln's face sharp and detailed? Do the fields or flat areas look smooth and shiny? Are the letters crisp or worn and blended into the surface? Next, examine the date closely. Compare the size and thickness of the numbers to online reference images of large date versus small date varieties. Pay special attention to the shape of the 9 and the top of the 0. Even small differences can matter. After that, check the lettering and date for doubling. Use a magnifying glass or phone camera zoom. True doubled dies usually show clear separation between images, not just fuzzy or shadowy edges. Also examine the mint mark for signs of repunching or unusual shapes. One important warning: counterfeit pennies do exist, though they're far less common than fake silver or gold coins. Most fake Lincoln cents are altered dates or added mint marks. For example, someone might take a common penny and try to add a D mint mark to make it seem more valuable. Look closely for signs of tampering, unusual texture around the mint mark, or inconsistent surfaces. If you think you've found something rare, professional authentication is always the safest next step. Now let's talk about some fun and surprising facts about the 1960 penny. One of the most interesting details is that this coin was minted during a period when Americans were saving coins at record levels. The post-war economy was strong, people trusted physical money, and coin collecting was becoming a popular hobby among children and adults alike. Many people filled folders, albums, and jars with pennies from circulation, hoping they'd one day be worth something. And in some cases, they were right. Another fascinating detail is that copper prices today give these coins an intrinsic value beyond face value. Because the 1960 penny is 95% copper, its melt value, the value of the metal itself, is often higher than 1 cent. While melting pennies is illegal in the United States, the metal content still influences collector interest and long-term perception of value. There's also something emotionally powerful about coins from this era. These pennies passed through the hands of everyday Americans during the early 1960s, people buying newspapers, groceries, coffee, and movie tickets. They were part of daily life during a time when the country was on the brink of enormous social, political, and technological change. Holding one today is like holding a small piece of that history. Collectors love the 1960 penny not because it's rare in general, but because it represents a perfect blend of accessibility and discovery. It's affordable, it's widely available, and yet it still offers genuine treasure hunting potential through varieties, errors, and high-grade survivors. That combination makes it especially appealing to beginners and experienced collectors alike. For beginners, it's an excellent entry coin, easy to find, easy to learn, and full of small details that sharpen your eye and knowledge. For advanced collectors, it offers challenges in locating pristine examples, rare errors, and high-quality certified pieces. And for casual coin holders, it provides the thrill of knowing that something ordinary-looking could turn out to be something special. There's also a deeper reason collectors appreciate coins like this. In a world dominated by digital transactions, physical money feels increasingly rare. A 1960 penny reminds us of a time when every purchase involved real coins, real change, and real connection to the economy. It's tangible history, something you can hold, examine, and pass down. And that's why coins like this continue to attract attention decades after they were minted. Not because everyone is worth a fortune, but because everyone carries a story. And sometimes that story includes rarity, value, and surprise. So if you ever come across a 1960 penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the date style. Examine the mint mark. Look for doubling or unusual features. Because somewhere out there, a collector once pulled an ordinary-looking penny from a roll, only to discover it was worth hundreds or more, simply because they knew what to look for. And that's the real magic of coin collecting. It's not about getting rich overnight. It's about curiosity. It's about learning to see value where others see nothing. It's about realizing that history doesn't only live in museums, sometimes, it lives in your pocket. So the next time you find an old penny, especially one from 1960 with a tiny D beneath the date, pause for a moment. Turn it over. Study it closely. Because the smallest coins often carry the biggest stories, and sometimes the most unexpected rewards. Most people have held this coin in their hand without ever realizing it could be worth far more than 1 cent. A simple brown penny from the 1960s. No mint mark, no shine, no attention. And yet, certain 1967 Lincoln pennies have surprised collectors with prices that feel almost impossible for a coin so ordinary looking. Today, you're about to find out why this humble penny might deserve a second look. The 1967 no mint mark Lincoln penny is a small copper coin that millions of Americans once carried in their pockets, jars, and cash registers. It features Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, just like most pennies of its era. At first glance, it looks like nothing special. But coins like this often carry hidden stories, and sometimes hidden value, that only reveal themselves when you know what to look for. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the late 1960s. The United States was going through major changes. The Vietnam War was ongoing. The civil rights movement was reshaping the nation. Inflation was rising, and something unusual was happening with coins. People were hoarding silver coins because their metal value was becoming higher than their face value. As a result, the U.S. Mint faced a serious coin shortage. To solve this problem, the government made a bold decision. From 1965 through 1967, All U.S. coins were produced without mint marks. That meant no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco. The goal was to discourage collectors and hoarders from pulling coins out of circulation. The idea was simple. If coins looked more ordinary, people would spend them instead of saving them. That's why the 1967 Lincoln penny has no mint mark. It doesn't mean it's rare by default. It simply means it was made during a special 3-year period when all coins were intentionally left unmarked. But what makes this penny interesting is not just when it was made. It's what was happening behind the scenes at the mint and what sometimes went wrong during production. The 1967 penny was made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. That gives it its familiar reddish-brown color when new, and a darker tone as it ages. The front shows Abraham Lincoln, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor his 100th birthday. By 1967, that design had become one of the most recognizable coin images in American history. On the back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, which replaced the wheat stalks design in 1959. What many people don't realize is that Lincoln is actually visible twice on this coin. Once on the front as a portrait, and again on the back, as a tiny statue inside the Lincoln Memorial. It's one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. Now, here's where things get interesting. Even though hundreds of millions of 1967 pennies were made, not all of them came out perfectly. In fact, some of them left the mint with striking mistakes. And in the world of coin collecting, mistakes can mean money. One of the most valuable types of 1967 pennies is the double die error. This happens when the coin is struck twice by the die at slightly different angles, creating a doubled appearance in the letters or numbers. On some 1967 pennies, you can see doubling in the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust." To the naked eye, it might look like the letters are thick or blurry. Under magnification, you can see clear separation lines. Another important error is the off-center strike. This occurs when the blank coin planchet is not properly aligned when struck. The result is a coin where part of the design is missing, sometimes dramatically so. Some off-center pennies from 1967 show only half of Lincoln's face or a partial date. These coins were not supposed to leave the mint, but some did, and collectors today prize them. There are also clipped planchet errors, where part of the coin is missing because the metal sheet was improperly cut before striking. These coins often have curved missing sections along the edge. When authentic, they can bring strong interest from collectors. So why does this matter? Because while most 1967 pennies are worth just 1 cent, error coins and high-grade examples can be worth far more. Let's talk real numbers. In circulated condition, meaning the coin has been used and shows where, a typical 1967 penny is usually worth only 1 or 2 cents. That's because so many were made and so many still exist. But in uncirculated condition, meaning it has no wear and still shows original mint luster, values increase. A high-quality, uncirculated 1967 penny graded by a professional service can sell for $5 to $20, depending on condition. But if it's in near-perfect condition, especially with sharp details and rich color, prices can climb higher. Now let's look at error coins. A genuine 1967 double die penny can sell anywhere from $50 to over $300, depending on how strong the doubling is and the coin's condition. Some rare examples have sold for even more when collectors compete for top-quality pieces. Off-center strikes from 1967 often sell for $40 to $150, and sometimes higher if the error is dramatic and the date is still fully visible. Clipped planchet errors typically sell for $20 to $75, depending on size and appearance. In rare cases, coins with multiple errors combined, such as off-center and double strike, can reach several $100s. One of the most surprising auction results involved a nearly perfect 1967 penny graded at the highest levels by professional grading services. These top-condition coins, often labeled MS67 or higher, have sold for several $100s at major auctions. While this is rare, it proves that even common dates can become valuable if preserved in exceptional condition. So how do you know if your 1967 penny is special? First, check the date. It should read 1967 and there should be no mint mark below the date. That's normal for this year. Don't assume that no mint mark means rare. It doesn't. What matters is condition and errors. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting. Use a magnifying glass or a phone camera zoom. Look at the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. Do they look doubled? Do the edges of the letters appear thick or separated? If so, you may have a doubled die. Check the shape of the coin. Is it perfectly round, or is part of it missing? If there's a smooth, curved section missing, it could be a clipped planchet. If the design is off-center, that's another possible error. Also look at the surface. Does the coin look unusually sharp, bright, or clean for its age? High-quality uncirculated coins often stand out from worn pocket change. Now, what about fake or altered coins? While fake 1967 pennies are rare because most examples aren't extremely valuable, altered coins do exist. Some people try to file, polish, or modify coins to make them appear like errors. A real error coin will show smooth, natural surfaces and consistent wear. A fake error often shows tool marks, rough edges, or unnatural textures. Another red flag is unnatural shine. Polished coins may look bright, but they usually lose collector value. Real uncirculated coins have a soft mint luster, not a mirror-like shine. If you think you've found something valuable, the safest step is to have it examined by a reputable coin dealer or a professional grading service. Here's something surprising. The 1967 penny was never meant to be collected. During this time, the U.S. Mint actually discouraged coin collecting by removing mint marks and limiting proof coin production. Proof coins, which are specially made for collectors, were not produced for circulation in 1967. Instead, collectors could buy special mint sets. That makes high-quality 1967 pennies more interesting, because they survived despite a system designed to keep coins in everyday use. Another fun fact is that the 1967 penny was made before the major metal changes of the 1980s. Starting in 1982, pennies shifted to mostly zinc with a thin copper coating. But the 1967 penny is solid copper alloy, making it heavier and more durable. Some collectors enjoy these older copper pennies simply for their feel, sound, and history. And here's something most people don't realize. Because copper prices fluctuate, there are times when the metal value of Preminus 1,982 pennies comes close to or even exceeds 1 cent. While melting pennies is illegal, this fact alone makes many collectors interested in holding older copper cents. So why do collectors love the 1967 penny today? First, it represents a unique moment in American coin history. It comes from the only 3-year period when all U.S. coins were issued without mint marks. That alone makes it historically distinct. Second, it's accessible. Unlike rare gold coins or early silver dollars, the 1967 penny is affordable and easy to find. Many collectors enjoy searching through rolls, jars, and old collections, hoping to find a high-grade example or a rare error. Third, it tells a story about everyday life in America. This is a coin that passed through grocery stores, gas stations, payphones, and lunch counters during a time of social and economic change. Holding one is like holding a small piece of that era. And finally, it offers the thrill of discovery. Because most people overlook pennies, valuable ones can still hide in plain sight. The idea that something worth hundreds of dollars could be sitting in a jar of loose change is what keeps collectors searching. Here's another surprising detail. Some 1967 pennies show strong red color even after decades. These are called red examples by collectors and grading services. Most copper coins darken over time, but if stored properly, some retain their original bright appearance. These red examples often sell for significantly more than brown or red-brown coins of the same grade. And while we're talking about condition, grading matters more than many people realize. A coin graded MS63 might be worth a few dollars, while the same coin graded MS67 could be worth 10 times as much or more. Tiny differences in surface marks, luster, and sharpness can make a big difference in value. Now imagine this. Somewhere in a drawer, jar, or forgotten box there could be a 1967 penny that's never been spent. It sat untouched for decades. No scratches, no wear, no damage. Or maybe there's one with a subtle doubling that's gone unnoticed. Or an off-center strike that someone thought was damaged instead of rare. These coins still exist, and many haven't been found yet. That's why this penny continues to fascinate collectors. So what should you do if you have 1967 pennies? Start by setting them aside. Examine them carefully. Compare them to images of known errors online. Look for doubling, off-center strikes, clipped edges, or unusual surfaces. Check condition. If you believe you have something special, consult a professional coin dealer or consider sending it to a grading service. Even if your coin turns out to be common, you've still connected with a piece of American history. And sometimes that's just as rewarding as finding something valuable, because coins are more than money. They're time capsules. They carry the fingerprints of history, economics, and everyday life. And the 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a perfect example of that. It's simple, it's ordinary, but hidden within its copper surface is a story of government policy, national change, and the unexpected ways value can appear where we least expect it. So the next time you see a dull brown penny from the 1960s, don't dismiss it. Turn it over. Look closely. Because one small detail, one tiny mistake, or one perfect surface could transform an everyday coin into something far more meaningful. And who knows? The next valuable coin discovery might not come from a vault or a museum. It might come from your pocket. Most people have held this coin without realizing what it might be worth. It looks like an ordinary penny. But in the right condition, or with the right mistake, a 1972 Lincoln penny without a mint mark can be worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And some people only discover that after years of carrying one in their pocket. The 1972 no mint mark Lincoln penny was made in Philadelphia, where coins traditionally did not carry mint marks at the time. It features President Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Over 2.9 billion of these pennies were struck, which sounds like an enormous number, but not all of them survived. And only a small fraction exist today in premium condition or with rare errors that collectors actively search for. To understand why this penny matters, we have to go back to the early 1970s. The United States was changing fast. Inflation was rising, the cost of metal was increasing, and the country was producing more coins than ever before to keep up with growing commerce. In 1972 alone, the U.S. Mint struck billions of pennies to meet everyday demand. These coins were never meant to be saved. They were meant to be spent, dropped into change jars, or lost in couch cushions. That's exactly why finding a high-quality example today is much harder than people expect. The obverse, or front, of the coin shows Abraham Lincoln's right-facing profile, designed by Victor David Brenner. This portrait has been used on Lincoln cents since 1909, making it one of the longest-running designs in U.S. coin history. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and in front of his face is the date, 1972. Because this penny was struck in Philadelphia, there is no mint mark beneath the date. On the reverse side, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln. Above the building are the words United States of America and EPLURIBUS UNUM, and below it is the denomination, 1 cent. The metal composition of the 1972 penny is also important. It is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc, the traditional bronze alloy used for U.S. cents before the switch to copper-plated zinc in 1982. That means this coin is heavier and richer in copper than modern pennies, and many collectors prefer these older copper cents for both their feel and appearance. At first glance, the 1972 no-mint mark penny seems completely ordinary. Millions still exist in circulated condition, worth only face value. But what makes this coin special are two things: condition and errors. In the coin collecting world, small details can turn a common coin into a valuable one. Let's start with condition. Most 1972 pennies were heavily used. They were spent on groceries, parking meters, and coffee counters. Over time, they became scratched, dull, and worn. But a small number were set aside by collectors or never circulated at all. These coins still have their original red copper color, sharp details, and smooth surfaces. These are called mint state coins, and they are graded on a scale from MS60 to MS70, with higher numbers meaning better condition. A typical 1972 no mint mark penny in circulated condition is worth about 1 cent. But in mint state condition, especially MS65 or higher, the value can jump to several dollars and sometimes more depending on demand and eye appeal. But that's only the beginning. The real excitement around the 1972 penny comes from one of the most famous Lincoln cent errors ever discovered: the 1972 doubled die obverse. A doubled die happens during the coin-making process when the die that strikes the coin receives a misaligned impression during its creation. As a result, the design elements appear doubled on the finished coin. In 1972, one of these dies created a dramatic doubling effect that is clearly visible to the naked eye, especially on the words Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date itself. On a genuine 1972 doubled die penny, the letters look thick, bold, and doubled rather than blurry or shadowed. This is not damage or wear. It's a real mint error that happened before the coin was struck, and only a small number of these coins entered circulation before the mistake was discovered and corrected. This error turned an ordinary penny into one of the most famous modern U.S. coin varieties. Collectors have been searching for it for decades, and examples still occasionally turn up in old coin jars, inherited collections, or even loose change, though that is becoming increasingly rare. The value of the 1972 doubled die penny depends heavily on condition. In circulated grades, these coins often sell for several $100s. In higher grades, prices climb rapidly. Well-preserved examples have sold for thousands of dollars at auction. In top mint state condition, some certified coins have reached 5 figures, especially when the doubling is strong and the surfaces are clean and original. Even non-error 1972 no mint mark pennies can bring surprising prices in top condition. Certified examples graded MS67 red or higher have sold for hundreds of dollars, simply because so few coins from that year survived without wear, spots, or discoloration. When billions are made, people assume high-grade examples must be common, but everyday coins rarely survive untouched. Now let's talk about how to tell if you have something special. First, check the date. It should read 1972, and there should be no mint mark beneath it. If there's a small D or S, it was made in Denver or San Francisco, not Philadelphia. Next, look closely at the words Liberty and In God We Trust. If the letters appear clearly doubled, not just thick or worn, you might be looking at a doubled die. The doubling should be bold and separated, not flat or fuzzy. A magnifying glass helps, but many genuine examples are visible to the naked eye. Then examine the overall condition. Is the coin bright and copper-colored or dark and worn? Are Lincoln's facial features sharp, or are they smooth and faded? Are the lines in the memorial crisp or blurry? The sharper and cleaner the coin, the more valuable it becomes. One important warning is that many people confuse machine doubling with real double die errors. Machine doubling happens during the striking process and creates flat, shelf-like edges on letters rather than true doubled images. These coins are common and usually worth face value. Real doubled dies show rounded, raised doubling that looks like two overlapping impressions. Because of the value involved, professional authentication is always recommended. Third-party grading services can confirm whether a coin is genuine and assign it a grade, which protects buyers and sellers and often increases market value. Now let's look at some real-world examples. A circulated 1972 double-die penny in decent condition often sells for $300 to $600. In extremely fine or about uncirculated condition, prices commonly reach $800 to $1,500. Mint state examples regularly sell for $3,000 to $10,000 depending on quality. Some of the finest known examples have sold for well over $15,000 at major auctions. Even regular 1972 no-mint mark pennies without errors have their own market. In MS65 red condition, they often sell for $10 to $30. In MS66 red, prices can rise to $50 to $150. And in MS67 red, auction prices have exceeded $500, simply because very few coins exist in that condition. What makes this even more fascinating is that many people still have these pennies sitting unnoticed in jars, drawers, and inherited collections. The 1972 penny circulated heavily, and some double-die examples were unknowingly spent for years before collectors realized what they were. That means discoveries are still possible, even decades later. There are also some fun and surprising details about this coin. First, the 1972 double die is considered one of the strongest double dies in Lincoln cent history, second only to the famous 1955 double die penny. The doubling on the 1972 version is bold, dramatic, and unmistakable when genuine. Second, this coin was created during a time when the U.S. Mint was under intense pressure to produce massive quantities of coins quickly. That rushed environment is part of what led to errors slipping through quality control, creating the rare varieties collectors treasure today. Third, because these coins are made of mostly copper, they often develop beautiful natural toning over time, ranging from deep red to chocolate brown, and sometimes even rainbow hues in protected environments. Collectors value original surfaces and natural color, which can greatly influence a coin's desirability. Collectors love the 1972 no-mint mark penny for several reasons. It's affordable at the entry level, making it accessible to beginners. Yet it also has elite-level varieties, like the double die, that attract advanced collectors and serious investors. It connects everyday Americans to the idea that valuable treasures can still hide in plain sight. And it represents the final decade of traditional copper Lincoln cents before major changes in U.S. coin composition. More than anything, this coin reminds collectors that rarity isn't always about age. A coin from the 1970s can sometimes be worth far more than one from the 1800s if it has the right combination of scarcity, condition, and story. So if you come across a 1972 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to examine it closely. Look at the letters. Look at the date. Look at the surfaces. That small copper coin might be ordinary, or it might be something that collectors have been searching for decades. And even if it turns out to be a common example, it still carries history in your hand. It traveled through shops, wallets, and pockets during a time of cultural change in America. It paid for lunches, bus rides, newspapers, and candy bars. It's a tiny piece of everyday history that survived long enough to tell its story. But once in a while, one of these pennies does more than tell a story. It changes someone's life. It turns forgotten pocket change into a serious collectible, and it proves that hidden value doesn't always shine brightly at first glance. So the next time you see a pile of old pennies, don't rush past them. Slow down, look closer, because sometimes the smallest coin holds the biggest surprise. Most people walk past pennies every day without a second thought. But what if one of those ordinary-looking coins in your pocket was secretly worth far more than 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the surprising story of the 1973 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks common, yet hides rare details that collectors quietly search for. The 1973 Lincoln penny with no mint mark is a 1 cent coin made in the United States and struck at the Philadelphia Mint. When a penny has no mint mark under the date, it usually means it was made in Philadelphia, since that mint did not use mint marks on pennies at the time. On the surface, this coin appears completely ordinary. It shows Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, just like millions of other pennies from the era. But what makes this coin interesting is not how it looks at first glance. It's what lies beneath the surface, and what a few rare examples have become worth today. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the early 1970s. America was changing. The Vietnam War was winding down, inflation was rising, and the cost of metal was becoming a serious issue for the U.S. Mint. Just a few years earlier, in 1968, mint marks were restored on coins after being removed in the 1960s to discourage coin hoarding. But the Philadelphia Mint still didn't use a mint mark on cents, which is why your 1973 penny looks blank under the date. In 1973, the Mint produced billions of pennies to meet the growing demand for everyday change. Vending machines, parking meters, gas stations, and payphones all depended on small coins, and the penny was still a vital part of daily commerce. The Lincoln Memorial design, introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth, was still in use. It showed the famous monument on the back, and if you look closely, you can actually see Lincoln's statue between the columns. What's fascinating is that 1973 was one of the last years before serious changes to the penny were considered. Copper prices were rising fast, and the government was already thinking about cheaper materials. So while the 1973 penny looks like many others, it represents one of the final chapters of the classic copper cent era. Let's take a closer look at the coin itself. The 1973 no mint mark penny is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. It weighs around 3.11 grams and has a smooth edge. On the front, Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty behind him, and the date below. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands in the center, with United States of America across the top, 1 cent across the bottom, and E pluribus unum above the monument. To most people, it's just another old penny. But collectors don't just look at the date. They look at condition, strike quality, color, and most importantly, errors. And this is where the 1973 no mint mark penny becomes far more interesting. Most 1973 pennies are extremely common. The Philadelphia Mint alone struck more than 2 billion cents that year. That means worn examples are usually worth just 1 or 2 cents. But a tiny number of these coins were struck with mistakes, and those mistakes can make the coin rare and valuable. One of the most important errors collectors look for is doubling. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned impression, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. On a genuine doubled die 1973 penny, you might see doubling in the date in the word liberty, or in God We Trust. The doubling is not blurry, it looks like a second, clearly defined image slightly offset from the first. These doubled die examples are rare and highly collectible. Another valuable error is an off-center strike. This occurs when the blank coin planchet isn't properly aligned during striking, causing part of the design to be missing and blank metal to appear on one side. The more dramatic the off-center strike, and the clearer the date, the more valuable the coin becomes. Collectors also hunt for clipped planchets, where part of the coin's edge is missing due to a cutting error during blank preparation. These coins often look like someone took a bite out of the penny. While damaged coins usually lose value, genuine mint errors like this increase value. But perhaps the most surprising and valuable 1973 penny errors involve wrong metal compositions. Around this time, the mint was experimenting with alternative metals because copper prices were rising. A small number of pennies from the early 1970s were accidentally struck on planchets meant for other coins or experimental materials. If a 1973 penny were discovered on aluminum or another incorrect metal, it could be worth thousands or even more, depending on authenticity and condition. Condition matters just as much as errors. Most 1973 pennies in circulation today are brown, dull, and worn from decades of use. But some were saved in rolls or collections and remain in nearly perfect condition. These are called mint state coins. A bright red, sharply struck 1973 penny with no wear can be far more valuable than a worn one, even without errors. In fact, high-grade examples of normal 1973 pennies have sold for impressive amounts. Certified coins graded MS67 red or higher, meaning near-perfect condition with full original copper color, have sold for hundreds of dollars. In rare cases, top population coins have reached over $1,000 at auction. That's a shocking jump from 1 cent to four figures, all based on condition alone. Now let's talk about real collector value examples. Ordinary circulated 1973 no mint mark pennies usually sell for 1 to 5 cents. That's their everyday value. Uncirculated examples in decent condition might sell for 50 cents to $2. But high-grade mint state examples, especially those certified by professional grading services, can bring anywhere from $50 to several $100s. Error coins change everything. A genuine double-die 1973 penny can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on strength and condition. Strong doubling on the date and lettering with little wear can command premium prices. Dramatic off-center strikes with full dates have sold for hundreds of dollars. Clipped planchets often sell for $50 to a few $100s, depending on size and appeal. And if a wrong metal example were confirmed, something extremely rare, the value could reach into the thousands or even higher, especially if unique or historically important. So how can you tell if you have a real 1973 no mint mark penny worth something? Start by checking the date and mint mark area. If there's no mint mark under the date, it's from Philadelphia. That's normal for this year. Next, look closely at the letters and numbers using a magnifying glass. Pay attention to "In God We Trust," Liberty, and the date. If you see clear doubling, not blurry shadows but sharp, separated outlines, that could be a double die. Then check the coin's shape. Is it perfectly round? If part of the design is missing and blank metal shows on one side, it could be an off-center strike. Look at the edge for unusual cuts or missing sections that might indicate a clipped planchet. Also, weigh the coin if possible. A standard copper penny from 1973 should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significantly lighter or heavier coin could indicate an error or wrong planchet. As for fakes, most counterfeit pennies are not made to fool collectors at the low end, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to create fake errors by damaging coins with tools, heat, or chemicals. Genuine mint errors usually show smooth metal flow and natural striking characteristics, not sharp cuts or rough surfaces. If you suspect you've found something valuable, the safest step is to have it examined by a reputable coin dealer or sent to a professional grading service. Now for a few surprising facts about the 1973 penny. Even though billions were made, truly high-grade examples are scarce because pennies were rarely saved in pristine condition. Most were used immediately, and remember, copper is soft. Just a few weeks in circulation can leave visible marks. Another interesting detail is that in 1973, copper prices rose so high that the metal in each penny was almost worth its face value. This forced the mint to explore cheaper materials, which eventually led to the copper-plated zinc cents introduced in 1982. That makes the 1973 penny part of the final stretch of traditional copper cents, a piece of history from the end of an era. It's also one of the last Lincoln Memorial pennies before subtle design changes occurred in later years, and decades before the memorial reverse was replaced in 2009. So collectors often see 1973 cents as classic examples of mid-20th century American coinage. Collectors love the 1973 no mint mark penny for a few key reasons. First, it's accessible. Almost anyone can find one in a jar, drawer, or inherited coin collection. Second, it offers the thrill of the hunt. Because most examples are common, collectors enjoy searching through rolls and change looking for that one rare error or high-grade gem. Third, it represents a meaningful moment in U.S. minting history, the final years of copper cents and the everyday coins of a changing America. For beginners, it's a great learning coin. You can study grading, spotting errors, understanding mint marks, and recognizing strike quality all with this one date. For advanced collectors, top condition examples and rare varieties offer serious challenges and rewards. And there's something special about knowing that a coin worth hundreds or thousands of dollars could look almost exactly like one you've held in your hand countless times. That mystery, that possibility, is what keeps collectors searching. So the next time you see a 1973 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it. Turn it over, tilt it in the light, look closely at the date and letters, check the edges. Because while most of these coins are worth just 1 cent, a tiny number tell a very different story, a story of rare errors, perfect strikes, and hidden value. Sometimes history doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers from the smallest places, from copper coins in old jars, forgotten drawers and pockets we empty every day. And occasionally, one of those quiet coins turns out to be something extraordinary. If you've ever wondered whether ordinary change could hold unexpected value, the 1973 no mint mark Lincoln penny proves that sometimes the most unassuming coins carry the most surprising stories. Most people have held this penny in their hand and spent it without a second thought. But what if I told you that one small detail on a 1977 Lincoln cent could quietly turn an ordinary coin into something collectors hunt for and sometimes pay serious money to own? Today we're uncovering the true story behind the 1977 no mint mark Lincoln penny. This is one of those coins that millions of Americans unknowingly carry, store in jars, or inherit in old collections. Yet very few realize what actually makes certain examples special, valuable, and worth examining closely. The 1977 Lincoln penny was struck during a time when the United States Mint was producing massive quantities of coins. Inflation was rising, everyday prices were climbing, and the penny was still an essential part of daily transactions. In that year alone, more than 4.4 billion Lincoln cents were produced across U.S. mints. But the version we're focusing on today comes from Philadelphia, and that's why it carries no mint mark at all. If you're unfamiliar with mint marks, here's what that means. Coins made in Denver usually have a small d. Coins from San Francisco often carry an S. But coins from Philadelphia traditionally had no mark at all during this period. So a 1977 penny without any letter beneath the date tells us it was struck in Philadelphia. And that's exactly where most of these coins were made. At first glance, the 1977 penny looks almost identical to many other Lincoln cents. The front shows Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing right, with the word Liberty behind him and the date in front. The back features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been in use since 1959, replacing the wheat stalks seen on earlier pennies. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, a detail that many people miss entirely. These pennies were made from a core of zinc coated with copper, giving them their familiar reddish-brown shine when new. By 1977, the mint had already moved away from solid copper coins, making these lighter and cheaper to produce, but still visually similar to earlier cents. So if billions were made, why does this coin deserve attention? Because in the world of coin collecting, rarity isn't always about how many were produced. It's about how many survive in exceptional condition and whether they show rare errors or unusual features. And the 1977 no mint mark penny happens to be one of those coins where small differences can lead to big changes in value. Most examples found in pocket change are worn, scratched, and dull, worth only face value. But coins that were carefully saved, never circulated, and kept in mint condition can be worth many times more. And if a coin contains certain errors or unusual strike characteristics, its value can increase dramatically. Let's talk about what collectors look for. First, condition matters more than anything. A shiny red penny with no wear, no spots and sharp details can be classified as uncirculated, and those are the coins collectors compete for. Even small marks can drop the value significantly, which is why high-grade examples of modern coins are actually much harder to find than people realize. Second, collectors search for minting errors, mistakes that occurred during the coin's production. These mistakes turn everyday coins into rare collectibles because each one tells a story of something unusual happening inside the minting process. Some known errors on 1977 Lincoln cents include off-center strikes, where the design is shifted and part of the blank metal shows around the edge. Others include double die errors, where letters or numbers appear slightly doubled due to a misalignment during the stamping process. There are also clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error in the metal blanks. But perhaps the most exciting category is high-grade examples, coins that survive in nearly perfect condition decades later. Because most pennies circulate heavily and suffer damage quickly, finding a pristine 1977 penny today is surprisingly rare. So how valuable can these coins really be? Let's look at real collector market examples. A standard 1977 no mint mark penny in circulated condition is usually worth just 1 cent. But uncirculated examples can sell for several dollars, especially those with strong luster and sharp details. Now here's where it gets interesting. Professional grading companies assign coins numerical grades based on their condition, and coins that achieve the highest grades, especially MS67 or higher, become extremely scarce. In recent years, top-grade 1977 Lincoln cents have sold at auction for over $1,000, with some examples approaching or exceeding $2,000 depending on quality and eye appeal. That may not sound life-changing, but remember, this is for a penny that most people would casually ignore. Error coins can command even more attention. Well-struck double die examples, dramatic off-center strikes, or rare minting anomalies can sell anywhere from hundreds to several $1,000s depending on rarity, demand, and condition. And what makes this even more fascinating is that many of these valuable examples are still out there, sitting in old coin jars, dresser drawers, inherited collections, or forgotten rolls saved decades ago. So how can you tell if you might have one worth more than face value? Start with the basics. Check the date, 1977, and confirm there's no mint mark beneath it. That means it's from Philadelphia. Next, look at the condition. Is the coin bright and shiny or dull and worn? Are the details sharp, especially on Lincoln's hair, jawline, and coat? Is the Lincoln Memorial crisp on the back, or are the steps and pillars blurred? Then examine the coin closely for errors. Look at the date and letters. Do any appear doubled or blurry? Is the coin centered, or is part of the design missing along the edge? Does the edge look normal, or is a piece missing or unusually shaped? One of the easiest tools you can use is a simple magnifying glass or a smartphone camera zoomed in. You don't need professional equipment to spot major errors, just careful observation and patience. As for counterfeits, they're rare for modern pennies like this, but altered coins do exist. Some people attempt to modify dates or mint marks to imitate rare varieties. But genuine 1977, no mint mark pennies should have consistent lettering, correct spacing, and natural wear patterns. If something looks uneven or unnatural, it's best to have the coin examined by a professional grading service or experienced coin dealer. Here's a fun fact many people don't know. In 1977, the mint was producing pennies at such a high volume that quality control sometimes struggled to keep up. This is one reason why certain error coins from this era exist in greater numbers than in earlier decades, but high-quality examples remain surprisingly scarce. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse design allows collectors to see Lincoln on both sides of the coin, one portrait on the front, and another tiny figure inside the memorial on the back. It's one of the only U.S. coins where the same person appears twice on a single coin. Collectors also love this penny because it represents a transitional era in American coinage, a time when rising metal costs forced changes in composition, production methods, and minting priorities. It's not just a coin, it's a snapshot of American economic history. So why do collectors still chase this coin today? Because it's accessible, nostalgic, and full of hidden potential. Most rare coins require large investments just to get started, but the 1977 Lincoln penny is different. Anyone can find one, anyone can examine one, and anyone has the chance, even today, to stumble across a rare example hiding in plain sight. That sense of possibility is what draws people to coin collecting in the first place. It's not just about money. It's about discovery. It's about holding a piece of history and realizing that something small, ordinary, and overlooked can suddenly become meaningful and valuable. And there's something deeply satisfying about spotting something rare that others missed, something that's been quietly waiting decades for someone to recognize its significance. So the next time you see a penny dated 1977, don't rush past it. Turn it over. Look closely. Check the edges. Examine the lettering. You might just be holding something far more interesting than spare change. Because sometimes the most valuable stories aren't written on gold or silver. They're hiding in copper-coated zinc, right in the palm of your hand. And who knows? That forgotten penny in your drawer might not just be pocket change. It might be your next great discovery. Most people would walk past this coin without a second thought. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But in rare cases, this exact penny has sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And the shocking part is, it might already be sitting in your pocket, your car cup holder, or an old jar at home right now. Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin most Americans have handled, but very few truly understand. This penny comes from a time when the United States was quietly changing how money was made, how long it lasted, and what it was worth. And hidden inside this everyday coin are rare details, collector secrets, and surprising values that make it far more important than most people realize. Let's start with what this coin actually is. A 1978 Lincoln penny with no mint mark means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Back then, Philadelphia did not place mint marks on pennies, so the absence of a letter under the date is completely normal. Millions upon millions were produced. On the surface, it seems like one of the most common coins in America. But as you're about to hear, some versions of this penny are anything but common. The year 1978 sits at an interesting point in American history. The country was still recovering from the inflation and economic struggles of the 1970s. The cost of producing coins was rising fast, especially for copper. At the time, pennies were still made mostly of copper, But the U.S. Mint was already preparing to change that forever. Just 4 years later, in 1982, pennies would switch to copper-plated zinc. So the 1978 penny represents the final era of traditional copper cents, heavy, solid, and built to last. In 1978 alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 5 billion Lincoln cents. That massive number makes it easy to assume every one of them is worth exactly 1 cent. And most of them are. But coin collecting isn't about how many were made. It's about condition, rarity within the population, and mistakes that escape the mint. And that's where this coin becomes fascinating. The design of the 1978 penny is part of the long-running Lincoln Memorial series. On the front, or obverse, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, based on the famous design by Victor David Brenner first introduced in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty. To the right is the date, 1978, and beneath Lincoln's bust are the famous initials VDB, honoring the designer. On the reverse side is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., with tiny details so sharp that if the coin is struck well enough, you can actually see the seated statue of Lincoln inside the building. A detail many people never notice. The words United States of America appear across the top, 1 cent across the bottom, and EPLURIBUSUNUM above the memorial. The metal composition of this coin is especially important. The 1978 penny is made of about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. That gives it a rich reddish tone when new, which collectors call red. Over time, exposure to air turns copper brown. Coins that remain bright red decades later are extremely rare, and collectors pay serious premiums for them. This leads us to one of the most important factors in value: condition. Most 1978 pennies you'll find today are worn, scratched, or dull brown. But a small number were preserved in near-perfect condition, never circulated and never damaged. These coins are graded by professional services using a scale from 1 to 70. A score of 65 or higher is considered gem quality, and coins graded MS67 or MS68 are so rare that collectors compete aggressively for them. In fact, one of the most valuable regular strike 1978 no mint mark pennies ever sold at auction was a pristine example graded MS67 red. It sold for several $1,000s, not because it was old, not because it was gold, but because it survived in flawless condition when nearly all others did not. But condition alone isn't the only thing that makes this coin special. Errors play a huge role, and this is where things get truly exciting. During the minting process, coins are struck at extremely high speeds by powerful presses. When something goes wrong, a misaligned die, a weak strike, or a damaged planchet, errors occur. Most are caught and destroyed, but some escape into circulation, and those are the coins collectors dream of finding. One of the most sought-after errors on the 1978 penny is the doubled die obverse. This happens when the die itself receives a doubled impression during production, causing letters and numbers to appear doubled on the coin. On true doubled die examples, you can see strong doubling on the date, the word Liberty, and sometimes the phrase "In God We Trust." These are not blurry or shadowy images. They look like clear, separated impressions. And when authenticated, these doubled die 1978 pennies can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on strength and condition. Another valuable error type is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly positioned during the strike, causing part of the design to be missing, while another part is shifted. If the date is still visible and the off-centering is dramatic, these coins can command strong prices from collectors. There are also clipped planchet errors, where part of the coin blank was missing before the strike, creating a curved or straight-edge bite out of the coin. These can look dramatic and are highly collectible. Some 1978 pennies were struck on wrong metal planchets, including rare cases of aluminum test blanks or foreign coin blanks. These are extremely rare and require professional verification, but when confirmed, they can sell for thousands. So while most 1978 pennies are common, a tiny percentage are rare, and those rare examples are the ones that change lives. Let's talk real market value. In average circulated condition, a 1978 no mint mark penny is worth exactly 1 cent. That's the reality. But in uncirculated condition, values rise quickly. A bright red example graded MS65 can sell for $5 to $15. MS66 examples often sell for $25 to $75. MS67 examples can reach $500 to over $1,000. And the finest known examples, graded MS68 red, have sold for several $1,000s at major auctions. Error coins go even higher. Strong double die obverse examples regularly sell in the $300 to $1,500 range depending on clarity and condition. Dramatic off-center strikes can sell for $100 to $500. Wrong planchet errors when authenticated can exceed $3,000. These prices aren't guesses. They're based on real auction results from major grading services and collector markets, where demand continues to grow. Now let's talk about how to identify a real 1978 no mint mark penny and avoid fakes or altered coins. First, look under the date. If there's no letter, that's normal. It should not have a D or S. If it does, it's not a Philadelphia coin. Next, check the weight. A genuine 1978 copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams. If it's significantly lighter, it could be altered or damaged. If it's heavier, it might be plated or tampered with. Then examine the details. The lettering should be sharp, not mushy. Lincoln's portrait should have clean lines around the jaw and coat. On high-grade coins, the cheek and fields will be smooth and glossy, with no dullness. For error coins, look closely at the date and lettering. True double dies show clear separation between letters and numbers, not just blurry edges. If something looks unusual, it's always worth having the coin checked by a professional grading service. Never clean a coin. Cleaning removes surface metal and destroys collector value instantly. Even a rare coin can become nearly worthless if cleaned. Now let's move into some surprising facts about the 1978 penny. First, this coin comes from the final years of solid copper cents. Just 4 years later, the mint switched to zinc cores, making pennies lighter and cheaper. That makes 1978 one of the last real copper pennies many Americans remember. Second, more than 5 billion were made, but fewer than a handful exist today in perfect MS68 red condition. That's not because they were rare when minted. It's because copper tones quickly, scratches easily, and rarely survives untouched for decades. Third, most error coins are found by everyday people, not dealers. Some of the most valuable 1978 penny errors were discovered in pocket change, bank rolls, and old jars, not in collections or vaults. Fourth, the Lincoln Memorial design itself ended in 2008. That makes this penny part of a finished chapter in American coin history, no longer in production, and permanently tied to a specific era. So why do collectors love the 1978 no mint mark penny today? Because it represents something powerful. It's a coin that looks ordinary but holds hidden potential. It's a reminder that value doesn't always come from age or gold. Sometimes it comes from rarity, preservation, and mistakes that slip through unnoticed. Collectors also love this coin because it's accessible. You don't need thousands of dollars to start searching. Anyone can check their change. Anyone can look through old jars. Anyone can stumble across a valuable example. And that possibility, the idea that something life-changing might already be in your home, is what makes coins like this so exciting. The 1978 penny also attracts collectors who focus on high-grade copper, error coins, and late-date Lincoln cents. As fewer pristine examples remain, competition continues to rise. And with growing interest in tangible assets, physical collectibles like coins are becoming more attractive to people seeking stability, history, and long-term value. But beyond money, there's something deeper here. This coin tells the story of a country in transition, a time when inflation was rising, materials were changing, and the mint was quietly preparing to reshape American money forever. The 1978 penny stands at the edge of that shift, one of the last copper soldiers before a new era began. And every scratch, every shine, every error mark tells a different story about where that coin has been, whose hands it passed through, and how it survived. So the next time you see a penny dated 1978, don't dismiss it. Pick it up. Look closely. Check the color. Check the strike. Check the date and lettering. Because while most of them are worth 1 cent, a few are worth hundreds and some are worth thousands. And the most incredible part is this. You don't need a metal detector. You don't need an inheritance. You don't need insider access. Sometimes real treasure is hiding in plain sight. And sometimes all it takes is knowing what to look for. Most people walk past this coin every day without giving it a second thought. But hidden among ordinary pocket change is a 1979 Lincoln penny that, under the right conditions, can be worth far more than 1 cent. And the truth is, thousands of Americans may already own one without realizing it. The 1979 Lincoln cent was struck at the Denver Mint and features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. It looks ordinary at first glance. But this penny belongs to an important moment in U.S. coin history, when changes in metal, production pressure, and minting errors created varieties that collectors now search for with serious attention. While most examples are worth just face value, certain versions have become highly collectible and, in rare cases, surprisingly valuable. To understand why, we need to go back to 1979. America was facing inflation, rising metal prices, and growing concern over the cost of making coins. Copper prices were climbing, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to find cheaper alternatives to the traditional bronze cent that had been in circulation for decades. The Lincoln cent had already gone through several design changes since its introduction in 1909, but the composition had stayed mostly the same. In 1979, the mint was still using a copper-based alloy, but this year marked one of the final chapters before the major shift to zinc-based cents in the early 1980s. The Denver Mint was producing massive quantities of pennies in 1979. Over 4 billion cents were struck at Denver alone that year. These coins were meant for everyday use, filling cash registers, vending machines, and pockets across the country. No one at the time imagined that collectors decades later would study these coins closely, searching for tiny details that could change their value by hundreds or even thousands of dollars. On the front of the coin, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right, designed by Victor David Brenner. Above his head is the word Liberty, and in front of his face is the date, 1979. Just below the date is the small letter D, showing it was minted in Denver. On the reverse side, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, which was used on cents from 1959 to 2008. Above it are the words United States of America, and at the bottom, 1 cent. Inside the memorial, if you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated in the center, making this one of the few U.S. coins that shows the same person on both sides. The metal composition of the 1979 penny is 95% copper and 5% zinc. It weighs about 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters across. These specifications matter because just a few years later, in 1982, the mint switched to copper-plated zinc cents that weigh less. That makes 1979 one of the later years of the classic copper cent, and many collectors prefer these older copper coins because of their weight, feel, and long-term durability. At first glance, this coin seems common, and in most cases it is. Circulated examples are usually worth only face value, But collectors are not searching for ordinary pieces. They're looking for coins in exceptional condition, unusual minting errors, or rare varieties that escaped quality control at the mint. And this is where the 1979 D Lincoln penny becomes interesting. One of the most desirable versions of this coin is a high-grade uncirculated example with full original luster and no visible wear. These coins were never used in everyday transactions and often came from mint sets or rolls that were stored away for decades. In top condition, especially those graded MS67 or higher by professional grading services, these pennies can sell for $100 to $500 or more, depending on eye appeal and market demand. That may not sound life-changing, but for a coin that started as 1 cent, it's an impressive return. But the real excitement comes from error coins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process, such as a misaligned die, a planchet defect, or a striking mistake. In 1979, the Denver Mint was producing billions of coins, and with that volume, errors were inevitable. Some of these mistakes slipped through and entered circulation, where they were spent like ordinary change. Today, they're prized by collectors. One notable error type is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank coin is not properly centered under the die, causing part of the design to be missing. A 1979 D penny struck 10 to 30% off-center, with the date and mint mark still visible, can sell for $20 to $100 or more, depending on how dramatic the shift is and the overall condition of the coin. Another collectible error is the broad strike. This occurs when the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, causing it to spread out and appear larger than normal, often without a raised rim. Broadstrike 1979 D pennies can sell for $10 to $50 or more, depending on condition and eye appeal. There are also double strikes, where the coin is struck twice, creating overlapping images, and clipped planchets, where a piece of the coin blank is missing due to a cutting error during production. Each of these mistakes tells a story about how the coin was made, and collectors love that connection to the minting process. One of the most valuable categories for the 1979 D penny is coins with dramatic die errors, such as die cracks, cud breaks, or rotated dies. These occur when the metal dies used to strike coins become damaged or misaligned. A major cud break, where a chunk of the design is missing and replaced by a raised blob of metal, can push values into the $100 to $300 range, sometimes more if the error is large and visually striking. While there is no officially recognized double die variety for the 1979 D penny comparable to famous coins like the 1955 double die cent, collectors still examine these coins closely for subtle doubling in the date, lettering, or Lincoln's features. Minor doubling caused by machine movement during striking is common and usually adds little value, but true double dies, if confirmed, can be highly desirable. In the real world of coin collecting, auction records tell the story of what people are actually willing to pay. High-grade 1979 D Lincoln cents graded MS67 red by professional grading services have sold at auction for over $300. Some exceptional examples graded MS68 red have brought even higher prices, approaching or exceeding $1,000 when demand is strong and competition among collectors is high. Error coins also show impressive results. A dramatic off-center 1979 D penny with full date and mint mark visibility has sold in the $100 to $200 range. Broad strikes and double strikes typically sell between $30 and $150, depending on the severity of the error and the coin's overall appearance. These are real sales, not asking prices, and they demonstrate that even modern pennies can carry serious collector value under the right conditions. So how do you know if your 1979 D penny is real, valuable, or just ordinary? Start by checking the basics. Look for the D mint mark below the date. Make sure the weight is about 3.11 grams if you have a scale, since this confirms the copper composition. Examine the coin under good lighting and, if possible, with a magnifying glass. Look for unusual features such as missing letters, doubled images, off-center designs, cracks, or oddly shaped edges. Authentic coins will have sharp, well-defined lettering and details, even if worn. Be cautious of coins that look artificially altered, such as ones with carved areas, filed edges, or added marks meant to imitate errors. Real mint errors happen during production and usually affect the entire design consistently, not just one random spot. If you believe you have something special, professional grading services like PCGS or NGC can authenticate and grade your coin, which often increases its market value and buyer confidence. One surprising fact about the 1979 D penny is that many high-grade examples still exist in rolls and collections that were saved decades ago by people who thought copper cents might one day be worth more for their metal content. While melting coins is illegal, this hoarding habit preserved countless uncirculated examples that collectors now appreciate for their pristine condition. Another fun detail is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse design on this coin was used for nearly 50 years, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. The 1979 D penny sits right in the middle of that era, bridging the classic copper composition and the modern zinc transition that came just a few years later. Collectors also enjoy this coin because it represents a period of economic change in America. The late 1970s were marked by inflation, rising commodity prices, and shifts in manufacturing practices. Even something as small as a penny reflected those pressures, and the eventual switch away from copper was directly influenced by the trends that were already visible in 1979. Today, collectors love the 1979 D Lincoln penny, not because it's the rarest cent ever made, but because it's a perfect example of how ordinary coins can become extraordinary through condition, errors, and history. It reminds people that valuable collectibles don't always come from ancient times or famous discoveries. Sometimes, they come from everyday change that sat quietly in a drawer for decades. For beginners, this coin is an accessible entry point into collecting. You can still find circulated examples in old jars and collections, and searching for errors or high-grade pieces can turn an ordinary afternoon into a treasure hunt. For advanced collectors, top-grade specimens and dramatic mint errors offer the challenge of rarity, competition, and the thrill of discovery. What makes the 1979 D penny especially appealing is that it teaches an important lesson. Value in coin collecting isn't just about age or metal. It's about story, condition, and rarity in the right context. A coin struck in the billions can still become special if it survives in exceptional shape or carries the marks of a moment when something went slightly wrong at the mint. So the next time you see a small brown penny with the date 1979 and a tiny D beneath it, take a closer look. Turn it over in the light. Study the details. Check the edges and the lettering, because while most of these coins are worth only 1 cent, a few carry stories, history, and value far beyond their face amount. And that's what makes coin collecting so powerful. It turns ordinary objects into windows into the past and opportunities for discovery in the present. Somewhere, in a forgotten jar, drawer, or box of old change, a 1979 D Lincoln penny might be waiting to surprise its owner. And sometimes, the smallest finds carry the biggest stories. Imagine pulling a penny from your pocket that looks completely ordinary, but could be worth far more than 1 cent. No gold color, no special shine, no dramatic design. Just Abraham Lincoln staring back at you like always. But hidden in the tiny details of this everyday coin might be a story of minting mistakes, history, and unexpected value. Today, we're uncovering the surprising world of the 1985 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin millions of Americans have handled, but very few have truly understood. The 1985 D. Lincoln penny was made at the Denver Mint and entered circulation during the middle of the 1980s, a time when the United States economy was shifting. Inflation was easing, and pocket change still ruled everyday purchases. This coin is part of the Lincoln Memorial Cent series, which began in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1985, the design had already become one of the most recognizable coins in American history. But even though it looks simple, this penny carries stories of manufacturing changes, rare mistakes, and hidden collector value that make it much more interesting than most people realize. Let's start with the basics. On the front or obverse of the coin is a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, originally designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner in 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the word Liberty, and to the right is the date, 1985. Just below that date is the small letter D, which tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint. Along the left side of Lincoln's portrait are the words, "In God We Trust." Flip the coin over and you'll see the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., with a tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the columns, a detail many people never notice without magnification. Across the top are the words United States of America, and below the memorial is the denomination, 1 cent. Above the memorial is the phrase EPLURIBUSUNUM, meaning out of many, one. So why was the 1985 D penny made? By the mid-1980s, the U.S. Mint was producing billions of cents every year to meet demand. Pennies were still widely used for everything from candy machines to parking meters and newspaper boxes. The Denver Mint alone struck over 5.6 billion Lincoln cents in 1985, making it one of the most common pennies of the decade. That enormous production number is one reason most people assume these coins have no collector value. But as history has shown, rarity doesn't always come from low mintage. Sometimes it comes from mistakes. Before we get into that, it's important to understand something else about the 1985 penny. By this time, the Mint had already changed the metal composition of the cent. Prior to 1982, pennies were mostly copper, but rising copper prices made it too expensive to keep using solid copper coins, so the Mint switched to a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. The 1985 D penny is made of about 97.5% zinc and just 2.5% copper. This change made pennies cheaper to produce, but also introduced new challenges during the minting process, which led to some unusual errors. Now let's talk about what makes this coin special. While most 1985 D pennies are only worth face value, a small number were struck with dramatic minting errors that have made them highly desirable among collectors. The most famous of these is something called a double die error. A double die occurs when the coin's design is accidentally imprinted twice onto the die at slightly different angles. When that die strikes coins, certain parts of the design appear doubled, especially the date, lettering, or Lincoln's features. On the 1985 D penny, there is a well-known double die variety where the word Liberty and the phrase "In God We Trust" show strong doubling. Even the date can appear doubled when viewed under magnification. These double die coins were not intentional, and they slipped into circulation unnoticed. That means some people may have spent them, saved them, or even thrown them away without realizing they had something special. Today, finding one of these in pocket change is extremely unlikely, but not impossible. Another interesting error seen on some 1985 D pennies is off-center strikes. This happens when the blank coin planchet is not properly aligned in the striking press, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted to one side. Off-center coins can range from slightly misaligned to dramatic errors where half the design is missing. The more off-center the strike, and the more readable the date and mint mark, the more valuable the coin usually becomes. There are also examples of clip planchets, where the coin blank was improperly cut from the metal sheet, resulting in a curved or straight edge missing from the coin. Some 1985 D pennies were struck on cracked dies, which can leave raised lines across the surface. Others show weak strikes, grease-filled dies, or missing design elements due to clogged minting equipment. Now here's the big question. Why would anyone pay serious money for a penny that was made by the billions? The answer lies in condition and rarity within that condition. While most circulated 1985 D pennies are only worth 1 cent, coins that survived in perfect condition, never used, never scratched, never damaged, can be worth significantly more, especially if they have been professionally graded. In the world of coin collecting, condition is everything. A penny with sharp details, original luster, and no wear can earn a grade known as mint state. The highest grades, like MS67 or MS68, are extremely difficult to achieve, especially for coins made in such large quantities. These top condition examples are rare because most coins were used in everyday commerce and quickly developed wear. A standard 1985 D penny in average uncirculated condition might sell for a few cents to $1. But one graded MS67 read by a major grading service has sold for over $1,000 at auction. In even rarer cases, top population coins, meaning the finest known examples, have reached several $1,000s. And when it comes to double die varieties, prices can climb even higher. Let's talk about real-world examples. One strong double die obverse 1985 D penny, showing dramatic doubling on Liberty and In God W.E. Trust, sold at auction for over $2,000 in high-grade condition. Another example, graded MS66 red, sold for around $1,500. Even lower-grade double die versions can sell for hundreds of dollars, depending on clarity and demand. Off-center strikes can range in value from $20 to several $100s, depending on how dramatic the error is and whether the date and mint mark are visible. Clipped planchets often sell between $10 and $50, while major die breaks or unusual strike errors can go much higher. But what about fake or altered coins? Believe it or not, even modern pennies can be counterfeited or altered to look like rare varieties. Some people try to create fake doubling by using tools or chemicals to distort the lettering. Others may attempt to modify coins to imitate off-center strikes or mint errors. To identify a real 1985 D penny, start by checking the basics. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams since it's a zinc-based cent. It should not stick to a magnet, and the copper coating should appear smooth and even. The date should read clearly as 1985, and the D mint mark should be clean and properly shaped. When looking for double die errors, use a magnifying glass or digital microscope. True doubling appears as clear, rounded secondary images on the lettering and numbers, not flat or jagged edges. Machine doubling, which is common and not valuable, usually looks flat and shelf-like. The difference can be subtle, but collectors train their eyes to spot it. Professional grading services can authenticate and certify coins, which adds confidence for buyers and sellers alike. If someone believes they have a rare 1985 D penny, getting it professionally graded is often worth the cost. Now for some fun facts. Even though the Lincoln Memorial reverse design ran from 1959 to 2008, the 1985 penny falls into a period when the mint's production speed was extremely high. Coins were being struck at such volume that quality control sometimes struggled to keep up, which is one reason why certain error varieties exist. Another interesting detail is that the zinc core of these pennies makes them vulnerable to damage over time. If the copper coating gets scratched or damaged, moisture can reach the zinc, causing the coin to bubble, corrode, or break apart. This means that truly pristine examples from the 1980s are actually harder to find than you might expect. Some collectors also enjoy building year-end mint sets, where they collect one penny from each year and each mint. In those collections, The 1985 D penny plays an important role as a representative of the Denver Mint's massive output during the Reagan-era economy. There's also something deeply appealing about searching for valuable coins in everyday change. The idea that a rare variety might be hiding in a jar, drawer, or pocket gives ordinary people a reason to look twice at coins they'd otherwise ignore. The 1985 D penny, especially the double die variety, has become one of those legendary modern coins that collectors hope to stumble across. Collectors love this coin not because it's old or made of precious metal, but because it proves something important about numismatics. Rarity isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about mistakes, survival, and attention to detail. A coin that looks ordinary can become extraordinary when history leaves its fingerprints on it through error and chance. For new collectors, the 1985 D penny is also approachable. You don't need thousands of dollars to start searching. You can go through old coin jars, rolls from the bank, or inherited collections. Even if you never find the double die variety, learning to recognize small details and differences sharpens your eye and deepens your appreciation for everyday objects that usually go unnoticed. And that's really what makes this coin special. It's not just about value, it's about curiosity. It's about looking closer at something familiar and discovering that it has a story, one tied to American history, industrial change, and human error. Every scratch, every strike, every imperfection is part of that story. So the next time you find a penny dated 1985 with a tiny D under the date, don't just toss it aside. Hold it for a moment. Look closely at the letters. Study the date. Turn it over and notice the tiny Lincoln inside the memorial. Because that ordinary coin might be hiding something extraordinary, a doubled letter, a shifted strike, or simply a moment in time when billions of small copper-colored discs quietly carried the story of a nation through everyday life. And who knows? The next rare coin discovery might not come from a museum, an auction house, or a buried treasure chest. It might come from your pocket, your couch cushions, or the bottom of a forgotten jar. And it just might say 1985, with a small letter D beneath it. Have you ever checked the pennies sitting in your pocket or jar, and wondered if one of them could be worth far more than 1 cent? What if I told you that a simple 1998 Lincoln penny, the kind millions of people handled without a second thought, could quietly be hiding a surprising story and unexpected value? Today, we're exploring the 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but holds a fascinating place in modern American coin history. This is not a rare ancient treasure or a gold coin from the Wild West. It's a penny most Americans have seen, touched, and spent. Yet for collectors, this small copper-colored coin represents something bigger, a turning point in U.S. minting, a symbol of Lincoln's lasting legacy, and in certain cases, a coin worth far more than face value. Let's start by understanding exactly what this coin is. The 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. In U.S. coinage, when a penny has no mint mark below the date, it usually means it was made in Philadelphia. That's because for most of American history, Philadelphia coins didn't carry a mint mark at all. So when you see a 1998 penny without a letter under the date, that's your first clue it came from the main mint of the United States. Now let's go back to the year 1998. The country was in a time of peace and economic growth. The internet was spreading into everyday life, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins to keep up with a strong economy. Pennies were still essential for everyday transactions, and vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers depended on them. That year alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 5.5 billion Lincoln cents. Yes, billion. That makes the 1998 no-mint mark penny one of the most widely produced coins in American history. So why would anyone care about a coin that common? To answer that, we need to look at the Lincoln penny itself. First issued in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. Before that, American coins showed symbols like Lady Liberty instead of real people. The Lincoln cent changed that forever, and it became one of the most beloved coins in the country. By 1998, the design was still the classic Lincoln Memorial reverse, introduced in 1959. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, designed by sculptor Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, appear subtly on the coin. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands tall, with Lincoln himself visible between the columns if you look closely. That detail has always fascinated collectors, because it's one of the few times a U.S. coin shows the same person on both sides. The metal composition of the 1998 penny is also important. Unlike older pennies made mostly of copper, the 1998 Lincoln cent is primarily zinc, with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982 to reduce production costs, since copper prices were rising. So while it looks like a copper coin, it's actually about 97.5% zinc inside, with only 2.5% copper on the outside. Now let's talk about what makes the 1998 no mint mark penny special to collectors. On the surface, it's not rare at all. Billions were made and many still exist today. In worn condition, most 1998 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. But in the world of coin collecting, value doesn't come only from rarity. It also comes from condition, errors, and unusual variations that slipped through the minting process. And this is where the story gets interesting. Some 1998 no-mint mark pennies were struck with mistakes. These errors can turn an ordinary penny into something collectors actively search for. One of the most well-known errors from this era is the wide AM reverse variety. On most Lincoln Memorial pennies from the late 1990s, the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse are spaced close together. But on some coins, the spacing is wider, creating a noticeable gap between the A and M. This design was originally intended for proof coins, but a small number of business strike coins accidentally received those proof-style dies. In 1998, a limited number of no-mint mark pennies were struck with this wide AM reverse, and collectors quickly noticed. These coins are still in circulation occasionally, but they're far less common than standard 1998 cents. In average circulated condition, a 1998 wide AM penny can sell for $20 to $50. In higher grades, especially uncirculated condition, values can climb into the hundreds of dollars. Another type of collectible error from 1998 includes off-center strikes, double strikes, clipped planchets, and doubled dies. A doubled die occurs when the coin die itself receives a misaligned impression during manufacturing, causing parts of the design to appear doubled on the finished coin. This doubling is most noticeable on letters and numbers, especially in the date or the word Liberty. While not every doubled image is valuable, strong doubled die examples can command significant interest from collectors. Even without major errors, condition alone can make a big difference. A worn 1998 penny that's been in circulation for years is usually worth only face value. But a pristine, uncirculated example with full original luster can be worth several dollars, especially if graded by a professional service. Coins graded MS67 or higher can sell for $50, $100, or more depending on market demand and eye appeal. Let's look at some real-world examples. In online auctions, certified 1998 no-mint mark pennies in high grades regularly sell between $10 and $40. Coins with the wide AM reverse have sold for over $200 in mint state condition. In one notable sale, a top-grade 1998 wide AM penny brought several $100s at auction because of its sharp strike and clean surfaces. And while it's extremely rare, dramatic mint errors from this year, like coins struck on the wrong metal or missing their copper coating entirely, can bring even higher prices. Some zinc ore pennies missing their copper layer have sold for over $100 because they look silver in color and stand out immediately. So how can you tell if you have a valuable 1998 no mint mark penny? First, check the date and mint mark. If it says 1998 and there's no letter below the date, that means it was made in Philadelphia. Next, flip the coin over and look closely at the word America on the back. Use a magnifying glass if possible. If the A and M are spaced farther apart than usual, you might have the wide AM variety. Then, inspect the condition. Is the coin shiny, bright, and free of scratches? Does it still have its original mint luster? Coins that look almost new are always more desirable than ones that are dark, worn, or damaged. Also check for unusual features like doubled letters, off-center designs, or strange shapes. These can all be signs of mint errors. As for fakes, while 1998 pennies themselves aren't commonly counterfeited, altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify standard pennies to resemble valuable varieties by altering letters or surfaces. The best protection is knowledge and careful inspection. If you believe you've found something valuable, having it evaluated by a reputable coin dealer or grading service is always a smart step. Now here's a surprising fact. Because so many 1998 pennies were minted, most people assume they'll never be worth anything. But modern coin collecting has shown that condition rarity can matter just as much as age. Even coins from the 1990s can become valuable if very few survive in perfect condition. As time passes, more coins get scratched, damaged, or lost, and the number of truly pristine examples shrinks. That means top-quality 1998 pennies may become harder to find decades from now than many older coins that were saved in large quantities. Another fun detail is that the Lincoln Memorial reverse used in 1998 was nearing the end of its run. In 2009, the design was changed to commemorate Lincoln's bicentennial with 4 special reverses showing stages of his life. Then, in 2010, the Union Shield design replaced the memorial entirely. That makes the 1998 penny part of the final chapter of the memorial era, which lasted from 1959 to 2008. Collectors also love the 1998 penny because it represents a modern coin that's still accessible. Unlike rare gold coins or early copper cents that cost thousands of dollars, this is a coin you can realistically find in circulation, in old jars, or in inherited collections. There's something exciting about knowing that a valuable collectible could be hiding in your everyday change. And that thrill of discovery is what keeps coin collectors searching. It's not just about money. It's about history, curiosity, and the idea that even something small and ordinary can hold unexpected value. The 1998 no mint mark Lincoln penny reminds us that American coins are more than metal. They're tiny time capsules, carrying stories of the era they were made, the people who used them, and the hands they passed through. So why do collectors still care about this coin today? Because it sits at the intersection of mass production and hidden rarity. Billions were made, yet only a small number have the special features or pristine condition that collectors seek. It represents the everyday America of the late 1990s, a time of economic growth and technological change. Yet it also connects us to Abraham Lincoln, one of the most important figures in U.S. history. It's also a reminder that you don't need to own ancient artifacts to participate in history. Sometimes, history fits right in the palm of your hand. And sometimes, a coin worth 1 cent can be worth much more, not just in dollars, but in story and significance. So the next time you get change at a store, pause for a moment before tossing those pennies aside. Look at the dates. Look at the details. That 1998 no mint mark Lincoln penny might be just another cent, or it might be something more. It might be a wide AM variety, a mint error, or a high-grade survivor from billions struck. And even if it's not, you'll be holding a piece of American history, a small tribute to a president who shaped a nation, and a reminder that sometimes the most interesting treasures are hiding in plain sight. Because in the world of coins, value isn't always about age or gold. Sometimes it's about the story, the surprise, and the possibility that the next great discovery could be sitting quietly in your pocket right now.